Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the 4MS podcast. I'm very happy to hear that you guys like the Richard Devine episode so much that we decided to keep this thing going. So today's guests, I have two old friends of mine, Lars Larsen and Jonah Lange from LZX Industries. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what LZX Industries is and what they do, they're a video synthesizer company that also operates in the Eurorack format. They've been around since 2008, and they share a similar origin with 4MS, and they actually go way back to the Texas years. And we'll be getting into all that in this episode. But before we start, I want to just get some news out of the way about 4MS, of what we've got going on development-wise. By the time this episode airs, this module has probably already been released, but we've got the new 14 HP leveling EQ amplifier module, which we announced at Superbooth. And it's an end-of-chain compressor and EQ, great for performances, so take some time to check that out if you get a chance. We also just pushed a firmware update for Meta Module that gives you 4-voice polyphony, which is very exciting. So now you can do some pretty complicated stuff on Meta Module. And we're also still working on Mesa, our other reverb module that we announced at Superbooth, hopefully coming out maybe in August. We'll see how that goes. And finally, around the shop, we've been working on the MIDI expander that everyone has been anxiously awaiting for MetaModule. So enough of me plugging 4MS products. I'm going to now shift the tone over into our very chill, hour-long conversation with LZX Industries, and I'm going to shut up now. So I started, like I started Richard's episode, with just talking about, how Lars and Jonah know Dan, and we kind of just let it spin off from there. So, thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more of this podcast. Arrivederci.
I'm Lars Larsen of LZX Industries. I've been making video synthesizer modules since 2008. I met Dan and some of the 4MS crew in the year that I helped open the shop Switched On in Austin, Texas. Switched On was unique in being like one of a very short list of synthesizer-specific retailers in the U.S. at the time. 4MS had just started transitioning from pedals into Eurorack modules, or around that time they did. Rotating Clock Divider was, as I remember, their first kind of like big release that was very successful in the Eurorack community, but he was doing pedal versions or module versions of his pedals for a while too, and we stocked all of those that Switched On in the Eurorack system. Eurorack was still very young at that time. Most of the store was not Eurorack focused like a synth retailer kind of is these days. And Dan and I always had a lot of good discussions, and were email buddies for a few years in there. Swapped a lot of modules during the Visionary series development years between 2010 and 2012-ish.
Hi, I'm Jonah Lange. I don't even know what do I even categorize myself as. Artist engineer, been working with LZX, I think, in an official capacity since about 2011 or so. Beforehand had, been collaborating with Lars for a number of years in our, local music and arts community in Denton, Texas. And then, through that larger community, had a number of interactions both with Dan and the broader kind of synth and music community in Austin. I was also a part of the launch of Switched On, served more in the at the time I was working as a carpenter and remodeler, so I was charged with doing the remodel of the retail space all by my lonesome, which was a very overwhelming thing to kind of take on at the time. But met a lot of great people in relation to all of that, and but at the same time was also working with Lars in the initial launch of the Visionary series, doing manual pick and place stuff in my bedroom and assembly, and that has evolved over time into product development and PCB design and additional skills and hats, and ultimately the relocation to Portland, and living the dream, man.
What was maybe you guys can talk a little bit about what the scene was like when Switched On was coming on, and like kind of like what the Eurorack world looked like at the time, and kind of what facilitated the necessity for Switched On to even exist, and what was going on in Texas then.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess there was electronic music, I think, was definitely kind of, and certainly like hardware-based electronic music was slowly becoming a bit more of a niche interest. There had already been like a very large, boom of, laptop bedroom producers and that kind of stuff. And so I think there was like already a rising tide of people who were like wanting to interact with and make music with hardware. And yeah, so there was already kind of like an active market for some of that, but certainly Switched On helped kind of crystallize a retail location where not only could you see these products like in person, but then also have the opportunity to even purchase them. And that was like incredibly novel at the time.
Yeah, there was throughout the early 2000s, you could drive to pawn shops in old towns and acquire vintage synthesizers for $50. Like the Juno 6 I've got upstairs was something my friend Chad Allen had found, and for like $75 at a pawn shop. And so he and a couple of buddies of him would like drive around town to town and find stuff and list it on eBay. And he made a living doing that for a while. And I had been encouraging him to start a retail space for it for a long time. And that's kind of what started the store. As he found partners to do that with, and then invited me down to be a repair tech.
So you guys both came into the Eurorack world as musicians first rather than video artists, or did you have background in video stuff before Switched On?
Well, I got a degree in film. My teens, I made a lot of short films and was in punk bands, and then that became more music focused through my college years. And when my more technical skills and artistic scene experience kind of merged together is what LZX really came out of, for sure. Like Jonah was saying, there was a shift from like noise and rock to electronics there in the late 2000s, and our local scene was really embracing a lot of acts that were doing live PA hardware sets. That was definitely the vibe happening in Austin at the time. Survive, Michael Stein and Kyle Dixon's band, and Silent Diane was another one.
Yeah, Austin was definitely kind of, well, obviously because of South by Southwest became, was synonymous with some, at the time, certainly. That's maybe debatably waned in relevancy in the modern era, but at the time, Austin was still very much like a focal point for underground music internationally. And so there was always like a very kind of interesting avant-garde and representation of like, whatever the new bubbling trends were within music, you would be able to kind of like see expressions of that in Austin.
So did you guys meet Dan around this time? And if it was around this time, I hope he's listening to this, because I hope he's breaking out into a cold sweat as I say this, but was this before or after he had dreadlocks, if this is when you met him?
I can definitely imagine Dan with dreadlocks, but I think he was maybe rocking the Einstein hair at the time. I don't really remember.
And was so at this period, like in early LZX and Switched On period, like was 4MS still pretty well known for pedals and stuff? Like were people doing harsh noise sets with noise swashes and everything, or was this right around the actual transition point?
I don't know. I spent a lot more time building synth DIY than going to shows in those years. Like, you probably made it to more shows than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I recall at the time, I think maybe the first time that I ever met Dan, they had a really small, kind of almost like garage shop in Austin. I forget exactly where it was located.
It was in like an artist residency type space.
Yeah, it was. I remember it was kind of like a weird little like shotgun space. Yeah, they just seemed like, him and Jonah. I remember at the time they were working together, and hanging out and just listening to music and kind of cutting it up. I don't really recall like what the broader perception was of 4MS at the time. It was, again, you're kind of speaking to like a niche audience of like, I'm a freak who like collects, boutique or one-off guitar pedals. And even then I would say like that, that industry was at that time, again, like maybe late aughts or so, hadn't really kind of like hadn't totally blown up into the mega, the mega industry that it became.
I mean, the big difference, like, is modular synths were rich people's, like we were punk art scene kids. Like nobody was going to pay $500 for anything. Would maybe get 50, get on the local buy-sell trade of music gear forums and get a guitar pedal for $50, and there would be like 2 albums written with the same amp and same guitar pedal before we even thought about like more gear. There wasn't.
Yeah, Dan was in one of the interviews I did with him for work. He was kind of explaining to me that in this period, people were basically using pedals as if they were kind of pseudo modular synths. Like you'd have a guy. Yeah. Dragging knuckles, doing harsh noise with like 5 dumb pedals plugged in a certain way. So talking about the financial aspects of it, it sounds to me like that's kind of what brought you guys to the world of DIY. And I'm sure synth repair too, because you'd be able to fix up something like your Juno. Mm-hmm. So my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but BitVision LZX era was right around the same crossover as the Andromeda Space Rockers, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
And were you guys affiliated with Handmade Electronic Music Austin, or was there like...
I don't know if it was, so we started, that was Eric Archer and Dan at 4MS were doing those kits. And Switched On would host some workshops to put the kits together, and they were all a similar kind of credit card format. And I can't remember if this was an official collaboration or even if there was an official organization or if it was just kind of like a casual project, but I was asked to make that kit so we could do a workshop at Switched On.
So BitVision came out of that, just a workshop. And for people listening, it's kind of crazy to think about that was kind of a long time ago now, but some of the people listening might not even know what BitVision is. So do you want to explain what BitVision is and kind of how that came about?
Well, it was, you could get, one of the only kinds of specialty, there were people doing some circuit bent mixers and stuff at the time, but one thing you could get pretty cheap and pretty regularly on eBay at the time was the Atari Video Music, which was a device from the late 70s that sold for about $700 when it was new. It was, it's been featured in like Devo music videos and was like a video audio visualizer. And during those years, I was just poring over every single schematic for any kind of video gear I could find, especially any sort of analog video gear designed to make something beautiful, come out of it generatively. So I modified quite a few video musics while I was working in repair at Switched On, and BitVision was really my attempt to do my own version of it. It was an all-in-one visualizer little synth that it responded pretty well with minimal input, minimal controls.
And did you have like a full intention? I don't know when Visionary came along in this timeline, but were you totally set on starting a video synth company at this point in time, or was that kind of just like a one-off thing?
Well, the Visionary module development predated my move to Austin. That started in 2008 when I was very invested in synth DIY experimentation, and I think that was before Muff Wiggler had really taken off as a forum, Mod Wiggler, I mean, and
well, at the time, the forum previously known as.
Yeah. And a lot of us were on electro music synth DIY forums. And
I just want to say, when we first met in 2016 and I started doing DIY stuff, I found by accident all of your electro music posts before I met you.
Nice.
And I think I was already absorbing information from you on electro music at that point, which was really funny.
Well, I was just, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a film school kid. But you figure things out when you have to. There were a couple big barriers to making a video synth that were more technical. Like, there's like simple circuits you can do to hack, things like the dirty mixer is a classic sort of video circuit bending thing. That's just a pot between two video sources. That was about where my electronics level was in 2007, 2008. But to make an actual video synth, there's a few kind of processing circuits you need, like a sync generator and a blanking circuit and clipping circuit that are kind of more, that were beyond me, So it took a couple of years to like sort all of that out, and I emailed everybody that I could get a hold of and teamed up with Ed, our other partner, in Sydney, Australia around that time, and he was able to help me get through the sync generator, the code for a sync generator that runs on an AVR microcontroller, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of nuts to think that that's basically 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
So maybe both of you guys, I feel like Jonah especially could speak on behalf of this, but maybe talk a little bit about, because I don't think people really realize this now with obviously AI and Google and YouTube, but you want to maybe talk about the landscape of what the internet was like 20 years ago and how making circuitry and learning this information was kind of like, using a hammer and chisel with a slate of marble and how difficult it was, or maybe speak on kind of what the internet culture was like and the difference between then and now in terms of your foray into DIY and learning about electronics.
Well, let me take you back. The internet was, crucial in disseminating what available information there was about any of these topics. Again, as Lars was mentioning before, both Muff Wiggler and electro music were some of the primary resources to even just kind of unchaining your ability to kind of access information in general. Not beholden to reading abstract, notes, and it'll also notes in a book, at a library, and in isolation. The conversational aspect of participating in these communities was a huge part of broadening your horizons and asking a question and then having someone reply with oh, you could also think of it, think of your problem in this way, or here's another way of approaching it. And that kind of communal aspect as it was a part of these online communities was integral for honestly for all of the designers. I feel of this era of Eurorack designers that we kind of came from. Everybody was participating in that culture at that time. The internet was very, much more information based, I would say, at that time as well. It was all of these kinds of abilities to kind of intercommunicate through the computer were novel. Even the concept of something like YouTube was kind of crazy and inaccessible for a number of years when it was first starting. And then eventually, as there was more broadband internet computers were faster, people were able to contribute more to the platform. And then, now you had like video instruction, which was a supplement to, what was typically just a text conversation. And you could actually see, the physical processes by which you would, disassemble something or reassemble something, or usually, or break something, break something on camera. I guess there's maybe a little bit less of that, but that was all very instructional, and again, not really gatekept or paywalled the way information is seemingly trending these days.
And did you guys meet on the internet, or did you meet in person?
We met in person. Yeah.
People still do that.
Denton was a small place with a very high ratio of freaks and weirdos. So
everybody knew everybody. 2007 there were like 6 different DIY venues. Yeah. So there was like a free show to go to every night, and just everybody was just partying with each other and starting bands with each other all the time.
And did you guys meet over music or over visual stuff? Like, what was do you even remember at this point?
It was I was shooting a video for my band, and my director of photography that I was working with, I asked him if he knew anybody that could get us another camera, or he suggested he knew someone with another camera, and so Jonah showed up, and we kind of... he's been showing up ever since.
Yeah. That's basically how it went.
As we say in a basement, surrounded by electronics manufacturing.
Yeah.
I think I can see Jonah's humpback from here.
No, I've roped Jonah into pretty much every project. I haven't roped him into a D&D game once.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So I want to go back to the internet thing, because it seems like a core part of LZX. I mean, I met you like almost 10 years ago now, both of you guys, which is crazy. But when I first met both of you, there seemed to be like a large emphasis on sharing information.
Yes.
Not just in person, obviously, which, I mean, my entire career is basically based on the fact that I've met you guys and you showed me stuff. But you want to talk a little bit about, I know, like, for years and even still, like, the LZX Facebook page and GitHub is like a new resource for video synthesis. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about like the ethos of open source and what it means to you, and what like sharing and engineering and collaborating looks like, and your thoughts on that subject, because I know it's pretty important to you guys.
Yeah, this is a good segue from what I wanted to bring up about like early internet culture surrounding this. Is like people used to email each other, not just sentences, but multiple paragraphs at a time, and you know, the forum threads on electro music, or there was also the Synth DIY mailing list, which is kind of like my generation's, like, that's what came before those forums, you know, was the Synth DIY mailing list. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what was that? Because I actually don't know about that.
It was an email mailing list. I mean, everything's so associated with like big tech brands back then, but they used to have like what were called Usenet and news groups, which were kind of more like an internet for like emailing and forum sharing. You know, that's and
I remember, didn't Analog Haven have one as well?
Yeah, it was pretty common for there to be like mailing lists, and that's like it's basically like a giant group email thread.
Yeah.
It was community driven, or was there like one person behind it that was like a core source? Does anyone even know? Is this like an ambiguous?
Community driven for sure.
Okay.
And they would like, in the threads that I had read through in the Synth DIY mailing list, they spent a lot of time talking about the Electronote schematics and things like that. But like those in the forum threads were just kind of starting points. Like I'd email anybody that was like I thought could help, and they would, you know, like Paul Schreiber was a big influence on me around that time.
Huge influence. Talk about answering in 10 or more paragraphs at a time. I mean, rest in peace, Schreiber, but that guy helped everyone. I mean, we all talked to him.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy.
And him and then my partner Ed. It's this was before anything about any of this was cool whatsoever. So like it was just nerds talking to nerds, sharing nerdy information just for the love of the format and the love of what it, just because it was exciting. And there wasn't any cloud associated with it or anything at all. Like I didn't even know anybody that owned a modular synthesizer besides one or two people through my entire experience, like building my first product series.
That's a common thing I've heard. Dan was telling me he didn't even own Eurorack when he started. He just like checked it out from. I don't remember who he borrowed it from, but he like borrowed a Dofer system. He was like, "Oh, this is cool," kind of do stuff.
There were maybe 10 Eurorack manufacturers, maybe less than 10 when I first heard about Eurorack. And Blasset, MOTM, and those other formats were all still kind of on an equal keel with Eurorack in terms of like,
market presence,
and then also like what ModCan format, all of that. And then by the time LZX came out, I don't know, it was under 20, I think a really big fan of Scott Yeager and what his brand really introduced to the Eurorack scene, because he wasn't. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm going to make my version of these like classic hi-fi Moog modules," whereas he was kind of coming in like, "I'm going to make my classic synth modules as a whole system that's from another realm that only I thought of," like. It was kind of the first model for like an artistic vision of like what a modular synth could be, and I think you've achieved that with your brand as well.
Thanks. Yeah. Again, I don't think my thing would exist at all had I not met you. And again, that goes back to the sharing thing. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is. I think the word collaboration is a really important word. And I remember when I first came on the scene from very green background, there was all these people who had no idea. They didn't know this world at all. And I would always hear this concept of like stealing intellectual property. And like someone's going to steal your design. It's this like almost like boomer idea of like there's a factory in China that's going to just be printing modules off, and it's like, okay, well, they're only going to be able to sell 20 of them because I designed it. Like I kind of want to hear more of what you guys have to say about like that whole conversation of like the idea of like what is IP, what does collaboration mean to you in engineering, and how do you view not just LZX, because I bring this up because Dan Forum-S, he's like so hardcore about open sourcing everything, and like what does that mean to you for I guess the future of video synthesis and the future of LZX?
For me, it's like work is the thing that has value, not ideas. Ideas are something anyone can have. I really hate the whole boomer mentality of like, I'm going to invent an idea and get rich, It's so capitalist and dumb. I feel like, that's why I like, so when I open source things, which I have, and I would like to do more of, I usually just open source the schematics, which is the knowledge portion. Like someone 50 years from now can read that schematic and build it, but generally don't open source the PCBs because that, because here's what I want to get out of releasing my design for free or openly is someone else taking the time and the energy to learn some shit. And I'm not really interested in giving things away that someone can just replicate without having to take that step. And I guess that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the sharing of information is like, crucial to like developing any sort of like skill or competency in just navigating life. You learn life skills, how to tie your shoes, brush your teeth, all that kind of stuff. Those things are taught to you by the people around you. And that seems, nobody just kind of like necessarily invents these processes for themselves. Nobody has necessarily the same, or it has the even the ability to like live their lives in complete isolation from everyone else. Everything about life is collaborative, and sharing our wins and our losses is a part of growing as people throughout our lives, and whether it's technical information or artistic information or how to cook a meal, like it's all part of the same philosophy. I'm trying to kind of carry that over into what we're doing with LZX.
Right on. I'm going to use the S word, which I haven't used yet in this podcast, but I'm going to talk about synthesizers now, which I begrudgingly will do because I actually prefer just talking to you guys about life. But I heard rumor at some point that 4MS was supposed to do a video module. Is that true? Do you know anything about that? Or that might not be entirely true?
There was some, we talked with Dan about, during the visionary days, he had the pingable envelope generator. And at that time, I was very much pushing folks to contribute to like the LZX format. I didn't want like a closed format. By format, I mean our signal patching standard, which is 1 volt signals and was compatible patch cable wise with other Eurorack modules. And I didn't want like the kind of design language that I developed for LZX to be proprietary to LZX. I wanted other people to be able to make 1 volt modules that looked like the branded ones that we did, so that people could have nice uniform systems. I think back in those days, there was a lot more expectation of a modular synth, like looking uniform. There was that. And so Dan, I think, he did a pingable animation generator, which was a prototype that like brought things of the pingable envelope generator down to the right levels. And it was great. It was a great video modulator. Because one of the things that had been missing from my initial set of modules was a complex LFO animation rate generator. We had the video oscillator, and that was about it. And then I think I had communicated with email with Jan a couple of years about an STM32 based video platform, and he had made a board, and we had experimented with it after we moved up here briefly. And I think we just got kind of busy with everything around that time. And
during the Eurorack gold rush.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty nuts. So this is probably a good chance to start talking about how audio rate signals tie into video synthesis, because I think some of the people listening to this might not entirely understand the complexity of video synthesis, but for anyone listening who doesn't know about LZX, a video rate system is based entirely around sync, and video rate modules keep the entire image stable basically by sharing the same sync. So audio modules can be introduced to give modulation, and I wanted to kind of mine your guys' creative knowledge to talk about how modules like the pingable envelope generator, QPLFO, all of our clock-based modules could be integrated into an audiovisual setup, because I know a lot of people getting into video synthesis might see barber pole stripes and spinning images and be like, okay, but how do I make music videos with that, or how do I do live visuals? And maybe you guys could talk a little bit about sensory translator and just some creative applications in the video world of audio rate sync.
I don't know. You have any specific philosophies on that? I mean,
well, yes.
Yeah, hey.
Strap in for the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I mean,
it's video and audio are not mutually exclusive. They overlap. Video, and I mean, in audio synthesis, you're used to thinking of things that happen slower than you can hear, CV signals, LFOs, and then you're used to thinking of things that you can hear, and sometimes, occasionally, maybe things that are faster than you can hear, as far as like timbre artifacts and things like that. But it's all still just two variables, voltage and time, you know. It makes any sort of waveform, whether it's audio or video. As far as video goes, so for audio, you've got things slower than you can hear and things you can hear. And then in video, you've got things that are slower than frame rate, which are things that happen across multiple frames. And frame rate's just about 30 to 60 hertz, which is also just about where you stop being able to hear things. So like that frequency range of like CV and LFOs for audio and animation and motion for video is the same. So you could use the same LFO to make something move in sound as you can in video. And then
and before you get too ahead of yourself, something I want to point out is maybe one of the reasons that the Pingable animation generator got derailed was because you guys make, is it called bridges? You make a CV to a 5 volt to 1 volt scalar module, right?
Yeah, there's been multiple ones over the years.
Was it called bridges, or am I making that
There
up?
was one called Bridge, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening, if you have a Eurorack system and you're interested in getting into video synthesis, and I promise you I'm going to plug Videomancer and LZX, we'll get there, and we'll talk about Vidiot and all of those things.
Oh, I don't care.
Okay, maybe we won't talk about Vidiot, but for anyone listening, if you have modulation sources that you really like and you have rhythmic sequences or rhythmic LFOs or something, you can very easily scale them down to LZX voltages and control video stuff.
Their
with
full
them.
dynamic range within, the parameters of the system. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to point that out. If you have something that generates video, and again, that's a whole complicated subject, but you can take these control voltages and scale them down. So I'm going to use that now as my pivot to Videomancer and what you guys are currently working on. And maybe you could explain the kind of design goals of what Videomancer is, because it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, it's the one ring to rule them all video thing that you could take your Eurorack and plug into and make visuals with. And we don't have to talk about Vidiot. People can Google Vidiot. But yeah, this is your chance to plug Videomancer and talk about it.
Well, Videomancer is not a Eurorack module. It's a standalone device. It's in concept pretty simple. It's a video effects processor. A video goes in, gets changed, and then comes out. It has multiple I/O. It's our first product with HDMI I/O, which, it's been, most TVs these days don't even come with analog inputs anymore, so it was a necessary step. But it uses an FPGA to load a video effect, which processes the video stream. And it's our first product where you can load different programs. So I think of it like it's closest. It's like a weird combination between a early '90s video game console and a '80s home computer and a video effects and a video effects unit and a drum machine, and it's kind of like a synthesis of all of those ideas in one box.
So it's like the type of thing, maybe you're a musician and you want to make cool visuals and you don't know where to start and you don't want to be tethered to a laptop. So maybe it's for somebody like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just plug in a camera and go.
Plug in a camera or even plug in your laptop, right? And feed it a video signal and or feed it the video that you've edited together, and use Videomancer as a live processor for taking it to that next level, I guess.
And does it have basic MIDI, and it has CVIO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's meant to communicate with multiple devices.
Correct.
It's not just like a set it and forget it, play with it and see what happens. Kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah, that would be. It's basically like a 12 parameter scent. It has a overlaid modulation engine on top of that, but the 12 parameters, what they are, changes depending on what program you load. Now we've got over 30 programs in the beta test firmware right now, and there's an open source SDK that's pretty easy to use to make your own programs and effects as well.
And does it do? I remember some years ago, people might equate video synthesis with vector synthesis, and they may not know the difference of it. So, difference between the two of them, rather. So, does this? Well, actually, I should probably start by saying what it is. So, vector synthesis is when you take two signals and you can display them on either a CRT or an oscilloscope and get all those cool kind of nuclear age shapes. And you guys have made a vector laser Cyclops, the vector laser controller. And I know a lot of people are very interested in vector synthesis. Does Videomancer do vector synthesis related stuff?
Sure. It does it in a very SIGGRAPH 1982 sort of way. It doesn't have a big frame buffer. It's so it can do like a 128 by 96 sort of litigious type thing. Vector synthesis is a little bit of a misnomer. You can it's more of a technique than a type of synthesizer, because it's more about what display you have that you're displaying the signals on. You display your video signals with ramps on a vector monitor, then you're doing vector synthesis, but using video synthesis modules to do it. Same as you can use audio URAC into an oscilloscope to make litigious patterns and things like that.
Yeah, and I was trying to use that as a way to shamelessly plug the ensemble oscillator, but I don't think it worked it that well. So I was going to be like, you could use an ensemble oscillator with wavetables to make vector synthesis. You could use an ensemble oscillator and Cyclops to do that. Which would be cool.
Is that a multi-phasic oscillator design?
Yeah, it's one of the 4MS modules that's this like really complex wavetable.
Oh, nice.
Oscillators. It's actually fantastic for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you had a Cyclops or is that the only ILDA interface you guys made, or did you do another one?
That's the only one we've released. Yeah,
that's the only one. Yeah, it's an OG too. So if you can find one on some weird corner of the internet and you want to control a laser with your system, it's a great way to do that. I actually, when that came out, I was working at Dark Place with you guys when it came out, and I helped build them. And I'll tell the PG version of this story, but I set it up in my living room and shot it against my white wall, and I was seeing shapes for like 2 weeks after that, and went to my eye doctor to explain to him what was going on. He was like, "What'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, my friend Lars lended me this like super high powered laser, and I shot it at a white wall, and I was making really cool shapes against the wall, and now I can't stop seeing them." And he just looked at me and he was like, "All right, like let's scan your retinas, you moron." Thankfully everything's fine, but I'd be happy to donate a long-lasting disability to LZX, because that module's insanely cool. I mean, controlling lasers with the synthesizer is just...
Are you still seeing them?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Maybe my eyes have adjusted, but...
You've gotten used to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Your brain's just scrubbing them out
It's
now.
insanely cool, and I know you guys have done a lot of work pioneering video synthesis over the years, but my personal favorite thing that you guys ever did was Cyclops, because it's freaking lasers.
Yeah, I mean, laser art is certainly part of the tradition that like all of the stuff that we do kind of comes from. That was definitely a tangent for, well, even just like early video synthesis. They were kind of like being developed in a commercial, or not really commercial aspect, but like being developed as like parallel technologies at that time.
The type of guy that works at a planetarium and listens to Pink Floyd a lot.
Right. Yeah. There's even coming out of like the 60s, light art and light sculpture and that kind of stuff is all part of well, I mean, I guess it actually predates the 60s even. I mean, if you want to get weird about it. But all of that's part of all in the wheelhouse of exploring the, extreme states of like what our visual senses can perceive.
Talking about early light art and stuff, maybe now is a good chance for you guys to talk about some of your visual influences or even engineering influences behind LZX in general. Like, what are you guys trying to achieve in a much more philosophical, existential way? Because we all know about, obviously, the engineering achievements, but what is it about video synthesis that attracted you, and what was your kind of lead up into that made you want to do something as insane as start a synthesizer company?
I mean, I guess if anything, I mean, a real anchoring point for both of us would be like film and cinema,
Yeah, we were movie nerds first.
Yeah, I mean, even before being like a performing musician or anything like that, like I was a deep movie dork.
Yeah. Maybe you want to talk about the video store you used to work at?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of, I mean, that culture now is even like, the video store culture is certainly informed where we kind of came from and, what, the media that we consumed, and, is a bit antiquated now in the realm of streaming, but, there is a certain appetite for the really cool kind of community aspect of what a video store has to offer.
The cult cinema shelf.
Yeah.
You can just watch everything on that shelf.
Yeah, I mean, so I worked, in my early 20s, worked at a video store for a number of years, and then was let go, and then collabed with some other prior coworkers from that video store to open up a DIY space.
Oh yeah.
Called Strawberry Fields, which was not necessarily our name of choice, but there was kind of some funny.
You take me as a Beatles kind of guy.
Yeah, that is me. Yeah.
Well, you had to imagine like this like dusty North Texas town, and you're driving down a street, and then out of nowhere there's this like lime pink and green building.
Yeah. It was
that was the DIY video store.
Yeah. And so we had kind of some creative financing, and we're able to open up like a retail, it was initially a retail space that offered the ability to do rentals. I don't know. It was a very confused business model. But
really, a DIY freak show event venue was not financially sound.
Yeah, I imagine that.
/ video store.
But yeah, there was, but it presented a really cool opportunity where we had, so we had some deep, film and video store dorks that got to curate all the contents of the store, and I got to kind of go ham on everything that was esoteric and weird that I knew of and that I had read about in any number of my like dumb video books, and like search out copies for, and had kind of a budget to kind of curate all this stuff, and it became kind of a cool, community focal point for in-store performances and movie screenings and all that kind of stuff for several years.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how long have you guys been working on Videomancer for at this point?
I guess we started doing some platform test boards in the fall 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels to me from the outside that this is kind of like I feel like I've watched you guys go through maybe even 3, possibly even 4 kind of chapters in recent LZX history. But from the outside, to me, it looks like this new super high-tech frontier for you guys, and seems like a massive technical achievement. I mean, Lars, when you showed me the first board, I was a little worried about you, because it was like, wow, this guy's making laptops in his basement now. Is he okay? Like, is everything going all right at home? This is the most number of components I've ever seen packed into a board. So what does what does this mean for the future of video synthesis to you guys? Because it seems like you're starting to shift. You mentioned before that you got HDMI outputs now because the kind of analog thing is almost, I'm not saying phased out because that's absurd, but it's becoming more and more difficult to do actual traditional analog video synthesis.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, the 1 volt format. I mean, when we first started it was like, as the technology around it evolves, we'll just make new I/O modules that use 1 volt as the transmission format. Sorry, I didn't let you finish asking your question.
No, the question is really just like, what does the future of LZX look like for you guys? And does Videomancer kind of, stick a flag in the ground for you? Or?
It feels more like a side project to me. Like, I love it, and but it's like it's less like kind of a capstone in the path and more like a encapsulation of something that was kind of, since we never really made like a glitch box, noise box kind of video synth, which is what a lot of people use and want to have. It's just something completely outside the modular case. And I'm not sure what's next. I mean, we've got some big projects to finish. I just know that I'm going to scratch maybe 5% of my ideas in my lifetime, so I'm not really worried about that. So,
yeah, because ideas are free, remember?
Yeah.
It's the work of making the video module.
There's some time that goes into...
Yes.
Yeah. So that being said, I think a great way to kind of wrap this up is looking back on now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but a 20-year history of LZX. What advice do you wish both of you could have given yourself at the beginning of your journey? I'm not necessarily asking for, what would you have wanted to do differently, but looking back at the beginning, what do you wish someone had told you then?
Keep a day job as long as possible.
I think that's pretty sound. My mom would be very happy with that answer.
It was more fun when I had a day job.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have a whole lot. I don't know if I have really any sort of like real, strong revisionist impulse, to be honest. Like, I think part of what is exciting about having gone and done all of this is the experimentation and challenge. Certainly, for us, and I know this is a huge part that we've talked about, is just coming up with ideas and challenging ourselves and learning new things and doing something new. And sometimes things are successful, and sometimes they're ragingly successful, and sometimes they fall short of of an ideal. Mm-hmm. But all of it just kind of becomes iterative and is a part of just an extension of the creative process, and whether that's tied to a financial result or just an aesthetic, personally satisfying, expulsion of creative ideas. I don't know that there's really any sort of It's all been pretty good, to be honest, and it's cool that we've been able to kind of find this path for ourselves, and who knows where it goes from there.
I mean, some projects have been complete nightmares, and some things have been complete pains in the ass. But we've never we've always reached for the weirdest idea we could come up with, and I think partially that's because you don't really regret that. It's like restraint and it's it's like pulling yourself back from well, this is a crazy idea, but somebody might not really like it. I think I'll just maybe make it a little bit lamer. We don't do that. And I regret not having ever done that, even through the years that have been huge pains in the ass.
Yeah, fair enough. And maybe another good kind of final thing is anyone listening to this who might get inspired because when I used to listen to people talk about stuff a long time ago when I was getting started, primarily Dan, actually, there was like Dan interviews, and I was like, I want to do what that guy does. For anyone who's listening to this, who's really excited and is like, I want to start a synth company, I want to do a weird thing. Like, what would you tell them?
I don't know. I mean, I would certainly say, like, study be obsessive about, understanding the history of the things that you are, that you're wanting to kind of like, of the history of your idea and like where it fits in the broader kind of legacy of, where the current, I don't know, if you're talking about specifically making things, like what's, where does your idea sit against like the current moment? What is the history and legacy of things that kind of are in that same vein? And, certainly like just doing, just trying and doing something will like lead you to some personal exploration, but also like by knowing where you sit in regards to the present moment and the legacy of, instrument design or product design or whatever the case may be, being obsessive about that and like knowing that, will give you an opportunity to kind of, find your own little pocket and niche and your own unique contribution to the continued chain of things that are made or invented. Nobody needs another passive mult, so, or, another, like necessarily like another, Moog filter clone or something like that, learn what you need to learn, but then, don't be afraid of, embracing something weird and different, and just try and find your own personal expression in it. That's what I would encourage anybody to do.
I would say never ever look at any synthesizer gear ever, and just find someone who's very smart about electronics who wants to be your mentor. And don't get on. Don't look at synth stores. Don't look at what's out there. Just make your own from a completely outside of the scene perspective. Bring your outsider perspective into it, and don't give yourselves any arbitrary rules. And don't think that you're smart ever, so that you're not afraid to ask people questions. And
continue to learn,
the people that get the furthest in this industry are the people that are constantly asking questions and revising their own understanding and asking more questions and repeating that over and over and over and over again as a daily habit. That's how you build anything out of it as far as a deeper understanding. I don't know. Try to avoid any sort of like capitalist or market-based ideas behind what you're doing. Like, just you have to engage with it at some point. The way that we always have is just like, it costs this much to build, therefore it costs this much times a number to sell it to you. We don't do any sort of like, this is going to play really well in this market, so let's bump the price up $40. I fucking hate that. I
don't know. How do you encourage people to listen to their own creative voice? Like either that is a guiding force in your day-to-day life, or it's not. But you gotta. I think that's central in terms of, kind of doing anything, or especially if you're looking to distinguish yourself or like have any sort of like recognition for you. You got to trust yourself and trust your gut and be curious and, and dig your heels in.
Cool. I want to thank both of you guys for carving out time for your very busy day to do this. So,
anything for you, Bob.
Thanks. That concludes another episode of the 4MS podcast. This episode was recorded on location at LZX Industries headquarters in the basement amongst all the machines and all the cool visual tools. I'd like to thank Lars and Jonah again for joining me. It was a pleasure hanging out with them. I had a blast. If there's a guest that you'd like to see in the future, or maybe a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments. As always, like, follow, and subscribe. Buy a synthesizer module that you don't need, preferably something from our website, and I really hope that you pick out something expensive. It would warm my heart so much. My name's Ross, I'm your host, and I hope to see you again in the future. Have a great day.